Oh, well, this is awkward, but there's still a long way to go. I mean, this is only the second game of the season after all. Even if it is to Burnley, it's these things happen. These things happen. So this is what losing feels like. It's been a while. I mean, even if we were 3-1 up, like I said earlier in the season, these things happen, right? Right? Even from 3-1 up, that's okay. I hope. I'm sorry, but 2-2 to Sunderland. 2-2 to a side that is possibly going down into the Championship. This is unacceptable. Seriously, guys, sort it out. Okay, I thought the Sunderland result was bad. What is this? Plymouth Argyle? Really? 0-0? I, you know, you know what? Move on. Move on. Okay, I'm starting to get a little bit worried now. This has gone on far too long. 1-0 Southampton. First leg of the EFL Cup semi-final. You know what? Just get the job done in the second leg. I genuinely don't care. Just by any means necessary, just get the job done in the second leg. You lost to another relegation candidate. What are you doing? What are you messing around at? Hey, you know when I said get the job done in the second leg, and then do you remember when you didn't get the job done in the second leg, and now we're knocked out of the cup? That, this is terrible. This is horrible. This, I just want to cry. Okay, I'm genuinely scared now. And by genuinely scared, I mean terrified. We lost in the FA Cup, a competition that is winnable, to a championship side in Wolverhampton Wanderers. I don't know where we go from here, guys. I genuinely don't know where we go from here. What is this? What is happening? We can draw to Man United. We can beat Chelsea earlier in the season. We then draw to them in the return fixture. We can beat Arsenal. We can draw to Tottenham. We can beat Leicester. But we can't beat Hull. This is getting ridiculous. This is getting scary. This is getting really stupid. Please sort it out as soon as possible. Please. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is it. This is the year of 2017 and the real Liverpool have returned. If you don't remember the real Liverpool, let me explain. The real Liverpool are a team that turn up for the big games. Whether they win those games or not is a different question. But at least they would play up to a decent standard, a good standard, a high standard that would definitely please the Anfield faithful. However, for the matches that aren't considered to be as big or against the quote-unquote lesser teams of the Premier League, they fail miserably. It's something that has frustrated Liverpool supporters for many years, and under Jurgen Klopp, that curse seems to have been lifted until now. The facts don't lie. 2017 has been an extremely poor year for Liverpool so far. Only one win in all competitions, knocked out of both domestic cups, and a Premier League title challenge that has now realistically faded. Liverpool's season has been turned upside down the past few weeks. And it was a season that began really well as well. A win over Arsenal on the opening day in a 4-3 thriller, A defeat to Burnley, but then that was just seemed as a minor blip as the Reds strung together several very good results, which included memorable performances and victories over the likes of Leicester City, Watford, Hull, and current Premier League leaders Chelsea especially. But they finally tasted defeat in the early December against Bournemouth in an insane second half display. But wins in Merseyside Derby, as well as against Middlesbrough, Stoke, and even Manchester City towards the end of December, seemed to suggest that Liverpool were getting their form back on track. 2017 hit though, and it hit hard. Since the start of the new year though, Liverpool have failed to record a single victory in the Premier League, beginning the year with a 2-2 draw over Sunderland, and what followed were defeats to the likes of Swansea City and Hull. But in typical Liverpool fashion though, they lose against the teams that they realistically should be beating, and at least do well against the teams that are near and around them. This was evident when they had draws against the likes of Chelsea and rivals Manchester United. But in other competitions, they had defeats in both legs of the English Football League Cup to the likes of Southampton. And it was frustrating, as even though this is considered a Mickey Mouse Cup by the majority of fans, it's still a good competition to win, especially if you're a manager like Jurgen Klopp, who has taken over a team and you're just over a year into your reign as manager. But what made it even worse was that a few days later, Liverpool were also knocked out the FA Cup by Wolves, a team that are in the Championship, and this has seemed to have put red alert on Liverpool and the Liverpool faithful. The most frustrating thing about it hasn't been the defeats. Defeats happen all the time in football. It's just been the manner in which Liverpool have been defeated. Every game that they have lost seems to be a carbon copy of each other. For example, the situation of how Liverpool defeat goes this season in particular has been the Reds have the majority of possession. They have the most shots, but fail to really test the opposition goalkeeper or fail to really break down a stubborn and disciplined defence. But when Liverpool lose the ball during that time, they look vulnerable at the back, and often it leads to a goal for the opposition. This isn't obviously the case for every game that Liverpool have lost this season. I'm sure that there's been a couple of games that they've got something out of that they probably don't deserve on a stats basis, but you get the idea. Facts show that Liverpool's lowest amount of possession in a game in which they have lost was against Bournemouth, and that was at 60%. But the percentage has ranged between 68 to 80% for possession stats for the games that they have lost elsewhere from that game. And the record of shots as well. Liverpool have failed to record most shots than the opposition in only 2 games this season. The semi-final first leg of the League Cup against Southampton and the game against Bournemouth. But otherwise, they've dominated in that aspect too. It's becoming a frustrating factor in the Liverpool side. And it just shows that there's no creativity in the centre of the park, which I'll get onto in a moment. Being a Liverpool fan myself, I know that fans can often over-exaggerate a victory and how good they are. I also know they can over-exaggerate a defeat and delude people into thinking they are much worse than they actually are. But because I know both sides of this, I also know possibly several things in which Liverpool can change in order to keep a top 4 push alive. This is assuming that the Premier League is over, Chelsea have won it, and there's no way of catching them. And if Liverpool are to maintain a decent season, we need to go back to how we were thinking at the beginning of the season, which is just get top 4. At the moment, top 4 is being contested by at least 5 teams. So realistically, Liverpool need to now readjust, refocus, and claim top 4. Now, I touched on the midfield earlier. The midfield being, in my opinion, a bit of a concern at the moment for Liverpool. It's even a bit of more of a concern than our goalkeeper or defensive situation, if you can believe that. But one person in particular has been quite bugging me for some time, and that's Emre Can. Now, don't get me wrong, I like Can. I like the type of player he is, but for Klopp's style of play, and this is just my opinion, remember, Chan for me doesn't fit into Klopp's system. Now don't get me wrong, he offers a lot defensively and he's a very good battler in the centre of the pitch, but it's his weaknesses that are really being put on show every week. He gets caught out of position too often, his decision making is 50-50 at best, and his overall speed and urgency in some situations is not up to the standard desired for this system. I don't think he plays well alongside Henderson in the middle of the pitch, and I would much rather see Gini Wijnaldum there instead of him. Which was a decision that last Saturday really annoyed me. I didn't quite get why Chan was picked over Wijnaldum. Whether Wijnaldum had a knock or not, I don't really know. But it just seemed a bit strange to me that Klopp would choose Chan over Wijnaldum when, in my opinion, Wijnaldum's been our best player in recent weeks. Not a big deal when you consider that near enough every player hasn't been putting in the kind of performances we've been used to over the season, but he was at least one positive in a sea of negatives. And I kind of asked the question that if Daniel Sturridge can't fit into Klopp's system, I don't really see how Chan can either. Maybe that's just me not seeing the bigger picture here. I'm not 100% sure on that. I'd like to know your guys' comments on that, because for me, I just see Wijnaldum as a better fit and brings more balance to the side. And he offers a lot more as well in terms of going forward and tracking back. Chan, for me, I don't see Chan offering what Wijnaldum can at all. Like I said, he's a good battler, but if Henderson's going to be in that deeper role, why do we need Chan there as well? It's the same with Lucas whenever he plays Lucas in midfield. I don't understand why they play the two there. Wijnaldum seems the perfect fit. I don't know. I'd love to know your comments on that situation. It would be wrong of me to say that it's all Chan's fault, because it isn't. Let's be honest. The past few weeks have been a terrible, terrible run for Liverpool. But of course, putting it solely on Chan is obviously not what's happened here. You've got to look at other star players. Let's look at Philippe Coutinho, for example. Yes, he's only just returned from injury, but he hasn't exactly hit the ground running since. Roberto Firmino's form has dropped. Lallana's took a huge hit from mid-December onwards, even though he was rated as probably one of the players of the season around about that time. And Sadio Mane leaving for the African Cup of Nations didn't help either. Mane, by the way, it possesses the one thing Liverpool lack: pace. He's crucial in that respect. Well, I wouldn't say that respect only, but he's got the one thing that Liverpool don't really have. Liverpool have movement, they have creativity, they just don't have enough pace in their squad, and that's where Mane comes in, and that's why it was applauded when he came to Liverpool and hit the ground running so early on. The Daniel Sturridge situation though rolls on, and that doesn't look like it's going to be resolved anytime soon until at least the summer. I would honestly be surprised if he is to stay at Liverpool. I honestly do believe he will be going. He's just a striker that when he's having a bad day, it's painful to watch. But when he's on form, it's a delight to watch. There's no really middle ground of consistency with Sturridge, I feel. It's either he's going to be amazingly good or he's going to be really, really terrible. And I think one person who's kind of suffered from this has been Divock Origi. Now, he was a player who I believe is still going to be a big star for the future. I still believe he's going to turn out to be a really, really great striker. But I think the constant chopping and changing between him and Sturridge up front has harmed his season. I could be wrong on this, of course, but I just see Klopp as trying to please Sturridge as well as Origi, and it just hasn't worked between the two of them yet. But I hope to see him have more of a consistent run in the future. Maybe even when Danny Ings returns, maybe he can kind of muscle his way in there a little bit. We have a couple of good striking options at Liverpool, but I'd like to see more of Origi. Now, we've discussed both areas of the midfield and the attack of Liverpool, so now let's focus on the defensive side. This is a side that I want to say it's improved a little bit, but it ultimately hasn't. Now let's start with what I think is the weakest part of our defence. Or the weakest player, should I say. Ragnar Klavan. For me, he reminds me of Martin Skirtle. He's no nonsense 1 minute, but the second minute he has a nightmare. It's moments like this that make me think he's probably not cut out to be at Liverpool. There's also Dejan Lovren, who's similar. Now, he has become better under Jurgen Klopp, and he's certainly been better than when he first arrived at Liverpool. But for me, he is also like Klavan and Skirtle in the fact that he will do something good one moment, but then ultimately terrifying the next. Lucas Leiva at centre-back doesn't work for me. I like the guy, don't get me wrong, but at centre-back, it just doesn't work for me. And whilst James Milner does provide a good attacking option, defensively he still looks a little bit uncertain and a little bit uncomfortable. On the other side, you've got Nathaniel Clyne, who's probably been our most consistent player at Liverpool. And whilst on the bench, you have the likes of Alberto Moreno, who I think should be moved and converted to a wing-back and not a left-back, but ultimately sold, as I believe there are much better options out there. The one area in our defence that has also been a bit of a concern, goalkeeper. Loris Karius was in goal for the majority of the first half of the season, but because of his shaky and uncertain goalkeeping, he was dropped for the returning Simon Mignolet. Mignolet, I think, has shown great attitude since returning and has put in some good performances over recent weeks, the whole result aside, of course. But for Karius, I still believe that he will turn out to be a David De Gea. You know, he's had a lot of criticism, but so did De Gea, and I honestly do believe that within a season or two's time, Karius can become a dominant goalkeeper like the Manchester United #1 is at the moment. However, can Liverpool afford to wait that long for him to come good? I don't think so, and I wouldn't be surprised if Liverpool go into the transfer market in the summer looking out for a goalkeeper. All across the field, though, all them problems have become easily identifiable, and I'm not surprised with the way that teams are currently setting up to play against us and are lining up as well with the way that they're going about their business. It's not hard to tell, it's easy to see and easy to spot, and it has to be sorted out ASAP. Of course, I don't think the entire blame should be on the players, even though I do believe that they should have the majority. I will finally talk about Jurgen Klopp, the Liverpool manager. He is the best manager that Liverpool have had in a number of years, since probably Rafa Benitez, and that's no offence to the other managers that came before him, including Kenny Dalglish. It's just I believe that Dalglish didn't have enough time at Liverpool to build anything. He was only there for a season and a half, if you remember. But Liverpool are lucky enough to have one of the best managers around, I believe. It's just he does have a couple of flaws, like every manager. The constant late substitutions, for example, which make little sense when they're happening during the 80th or 85th minute, especially when the game is still very much open as a draw, or even when Liverpool are chasing the game from coming behind. He also does have one more flaw, and that's the transfer policy. A transfer policy that I believe in January he should have took full advantage of, because the players that are needed right now. Of course, I don't put the entire blame on him. I do believe that behind the scenes there are other factors that come into play, whether it be from an owner's point of view, chairman, whatever, or the player that is currently at the different club. Obviously, they come into play. They're different factors, but I do believe that he should have done some business in January, which he obviously didn't do. But I do honestly urge Liverpool fans to be patient. I urge them to have full faith in everything that's going on right now, because this could build character for next season. Jesus Christ, I sound like Brendan Rodgers when I say character. But this could honestly build them for next season. The players that are definitely going to be there next season, you think of Firmino, Coutinho, Origi, Mane. They're the kind of Lallana. They're the kind of players that will probably. I'm 99% sure that they'll be there next season, regardless. I mean, obviously, contracts don't mean nothing in football, so don't quote me on that. But I'm 99% certain that they'll be there next season. And as we've seen before, Klopp at Dortmund, he showed that he can get players in that are completely unknown and turn them into absolute superstars. We know that for a fact. And I just think that it's, of course, it's been a rough few weeks, but the overreaction of we had a title chasing season that we weren't expecting really, and that now that we've had a few bad results, it's all doom and gloom. We've actually climbed higher than many people realise. We've climbed higher than we thought, which is why the knockdown to reality, the knockdown to earth has hurt a lot, because we've climbed so high that it's been a very, very long fall. They just need to change the attitude of certain teams and need to strengthen the areas with the right players. But of course, as always with these things, I could be horribly, horribly wrong. If I was wrong, I'd love you to tell me about it. If I was right, I'd love to tell me about that as well. If you have other problems that I may have overlooked, I'd love you to tell me about them. Maybe I haven't noted a problem. Maybe I've underestimated a problem. What would you change? Who would you bring in the summer if you're Liverpool fans? I want you to speak to me, guys, on this. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next.